The iconic band, the Beatles, didn't just make music. They revolutionized an entire generation. From their modest beginnings in Liverpool to taking the world by storm, their sound, style, and groundbreaking albums created a legacy that still sends ripples through the music scene today. What's more, if you were to Google the richest group of all time, there's one name that always comes up: the Beatles. These four lads from England didn't just change the face of music. They ranked in a fortune that's simply mind-blowing. In today's video, we're going to dive into every paycheck they ever earned, from their legendary film roles to the concerts that packed out arenas and earned them millions. Indeed, one thing you all will need to ponder on: did they really earn this much? For the whole truth, stick with us as we unravel the wealth behind the Fab Four's meteoric rise and the real truth of the richest group in history. Let me first tell you, there are various revenue sources for the band, including their earnings from music, tours, and films. From music sales and royalties to the massive earnings from their concert tours, films, merchandising, and licensing, the Beatles have accumulated wealth in several ways. Not to mention, their post-breakup earnings continue to add to their fortune. We'll dive deeper into these sources later, but for now, let's take a straight dive into the paychecks they earned from the films they worked on. Their first movie was A Hard Day's Night, which was released in 1964. This film was a massive financial success, grossing over $12 million at the time, and the Beatles were paid a combined total of $2.5 million for the project, an enormous sum for the band back then. A Hard Day's Night not only showcased their rise to fame, but also became an iconic piece of pop culture. While many consider A Hard Day's Night to be the Beatles' first ever movie, it wasn't actually their very first film. It was, however, their first major feature film. Before that, the Beatles had already made their film debut with a short documentary titled The Beatles, the first U.S. visit in 1964, which documented their first trip to the United States. The exact earnings from this documentary aren't widely documented, as it wasn't a major commercial film. However, considering their growing fame at the time, it's likely they earned between $100,000 to $500,000 for the project. After A Hard Day's Night in 1964, the Beatles went on to star in another major film, Help, 1965. Directed by Richard Lester, Help had a production budget of $2 million. The film grossed around $13 million, further solidifying their place in pop culture. The band received a paycheck, with each member earning a combined total of $2.5 million for their roles. Help was another groundbreaking moment in their career, combining comedy, action, and music in a unique way. Let's dive into the next milestone in the Beatles' cinematic journey. After the success of Help, the band ventured into a bold and experimental film with Magical Mystery Tour in 1967. Unlike their earlier hits, this film showcased the Beatles' growing creative freedom, combining a surreal road trip with their iconic music. The film, which was written and directed by the band, followed the Beatles as they embarked on a mysterious and whimsical coach tour, full of strange characters and surreal imagery. The film was made on a modest budget of $1 million, but its reception was far from stellar. While it grossed around $2 million, the abstract style and unconventional storytelling made it a commercial flop compared to their previous successes. Critics were unimpressed, especially in the United States, and audiences found it challenging to connect with the experimental narrative. As for earnings, Magical Mystery Tour did not perform well at the box office, grossing around $2 million. This made the film a flop compared to its predecessors, as it failed to generate significant revenue. However, the accompanying soundtrack, featuring hits like Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane, became a chart-topping success, partially redeeming the project. As for their earnings, the Beatles received a flat fee of around $500,000 to $1 million for their involvement, as the film was produced under their own Apple Corps banner. After the mixed reception of Magical Mystery Tour, the Beatles took a different approach with their next film, Yellow Submarine, released in 1968. Unlike their previous movies, Yellow Submarine was an animated feature and showcased the band in a whimsical, psychedelic adventure set in the fantastical land of Pepperland. The film was produced on a budget of approximately $1 million, which was quite modest for an animated feature of its scale and ambition. Yellow Submarine turned out to be a commercial success, grossing over $8 million worldwide. Its unique visual style and soundtrack captivated audiences, and it became one of the most iconic animated films of its era. Critics and fans alike praised the film for its groundbreaking animation, surreal humor, and brilliant integration of the Beatles' music. Interestingly, the Beatles themselves had minimal involvement in the production of the film. They did not voice their characters, and only appeared briefly in a live-action segment. They still received a reported $1,200,000 for their contributions and the use of their music. The film's soundtrack, featuring hits like All You Need Is Love and Yellow Submarine, added to its success, resonating with fans across generations. This film was not just a success. It became an enduring piece of the Beatles' history, celebrated for its creativity and innovation. Now, before moving forward, let's take a moment to look back at how this legendary band came together, especially as the next film marks their last project before their split. The Beatles' story began in Liverpool, England in 1957 when a teenage John Lennon formed a skiffle group called the Quarrymen. The group played a mix of folk and rock and roll, capturing the vibrant energy of the era. That same year, Lennon met a young and talented musician named Paul McCartney, who soon joined the Quarrymen as a guitarist. In 1958, McCartney introduced George Harrison, another skilled guitarist, to the group. With Harrison on board, the trio began honing their sound and performing together. By 1960, Pete Best joined as the drummer. And then Stuart Sutcliffe joined the group through his friendship with John Lennon, who admired his artistic talent and encouraged him to become their bassist. Completing a lineup that included John Lennon is on vocals and guitar, Paul McCartney is on vocals and bass guitar, George Harrison is on guitar and vocals, Pete Best is on drums, and Stuart Sutcliffe is on bass guitar. Sutcliffe was a member until 1961, when he decided to leave the band to focus on his art career, leading McCartney to take over as the bassist. Now coming back to film's Paycheck, in 1970, Let It Be became the final film featuring the Beatles together, serving as both a documentary of their creative process and an unintentional chronicle of their breakup. Produced on a budget of approximately $1,200,000, the film grossed around $2 million worldwide, making it a modest financial success. The Beatles received a combined paycheck of $1,500,000 for their involvement, reflecting both their iconic status and the value of the intimate access the film provided. Despite mixed emotions from fans and critics, the film earned an Academy Award for Best Original Song Score, solidifying its cultural significance. As a bittersweet farewell to the band's illustrious journey, Let It Be remains a poignant reminder of the Beatles' unparalleled legacy. And now their work in films as a band had completed, but not their paychecks, as bands not only earn from films, but they have various revenue sources their earnings from music tours. From music sales and royalties to the massive earnings from their concert tours, films, merchandising, and licensing. Music sales and royalties. The Beatles' music catalog has generated billions of dollars in sales over the years. Their albums have sold over 600 million copies worldwide, and their catalog continues to earn royalties from streaming, physical sales, and licensing. Some estimates suggest that the Beatles have earned well over $1 billion from their music royalties alone. Concert tours. During the height of their popularity in the 1960s, the Beatles embarked on several lucrative tours. Their final tour in 1966 earned them over $1 million in ticket sales, which was significant for the time. Let's take a moment to explore an often overlooked yet incredibly lucrative aspect of the Beatles' empire: their merchandising and licensing. In the mid-1960s, the Beatles pioneered band merchandising, earning an estimated $50 million annually through branded products such as T-shirts, posters, lunchboxes, toys, and even wigs styled like their iconic haircuts, a figure equivalent to over $400 million today when adjusted for inflation. Their licensing efforts also proved to be a goldmine. The band's official logo and imagery, including the renowned Apple Core logo, have been licensed for countless products worldwide. Partnerships with modern brands, like Lego's Yellow Submarine set, and collaborations with fashion labels, continue to generate substantial income. Their music licensing has been equally lucrative, with songs used in movies, commercials, and TV shows, often fetching licensing fees between $250,000 to $1 million. A notable example is Nike's $500,000 payment in 1987 for the rights to use Revolution in a commercial. The band's trademark licensing has extended to a variety of ventures, such as the highly successful video game The Beatles, Rock Band, which generated over $1 billion in global sales, with a significant share going to the Beatles' estate and Apple Corps. Even after their breakup, the Beatles brand has flourished through modern campaigns like the Beatles' Love Cirque du Soleil show and the digital remastering of their albums, adding tens of millions of dollars annually. Cumulatively, the Beatles' earnings from merchandising and licensing are estimated to exceed $1 billion, with annual revenues ranging from $50 million to $100 million. So far, you've all understood just how much the Beatles have earned. Obviously, a lot of money. But did they actually get all of it? And was the split of their earnings equal or not? Let's dive straight into it. The Beatles' financial journey is as fascinating as their music career. You might think the band split their earnings equally among the four members, but the truth is a bit more complicated. And you must be surprised to know that in the early days, their manager, Brian Epstein, received a substantial 25% of the revenue from concerts, merchandise, and performance royalties, with the remaining 75% evenly divided among John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. However, this equal division didn't extend to songwriting royalties. John and Paul, the band's primary songwriters, penned nearly 200 songs, while George Harrison wrote 22 songs, and Ringo Starr contributed 2 songs. Consequently, songwriting royalties heavily favored Lennon and McCartney, creating a financial disparity within the group. Early record contracts further complicated their earnings. The band received just 1 penny per UK record sold, divided among all 4 members, and half a penny for international sales. Despite these modest terms, their massive record sales turned these pennies into substantial income. Merchandising played a crucial role in their financial empire. Initially, they received a 10% royalty from official merchandise, later renegotiated to a 49% stake. Even after Epstein's share, this income was evenly split. Licensing agreements, such as ownership stakes in Northern Songs, the company managing their song catalog, added another layer of financial complexity, favoring John and Paul once again. In conclusion, while the Beatles shared many earnings equally, disparities in songwriting royalties and other revenue streams led to an uneven distribution of wealth. And that wraps up the fascinating journey into the financial empire of the Beatles. But wait, if you like this one, I'm sure you guys will also like porn star Mae West's every paycheck for every movie she ever worked in, which you can just watch by clicking on a pop-up video on the screen. For the Beatles, from their record sales and concerts to merchandising and licensing, this legendary band truly redefined what it means to succeed in music and business. Their paychecks weren't just about the numbers, but a testament to their global impact and enduring legacy.